As Carlos said, we will be talking about scaling Agile across business functions in order to deliver on that promise of business agility. I mean, that's why we're here, right? Is to think about business agility and how can we not just take the IT section of the business Agile, but the entire business Agile. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. One is how we got to where we are today. And that'll be very brief. Then we'll go into the challenges we have when scaling across business functions. Lastly, I'll give you 3 components to consider when scaling across those functions, and that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time. So let's get started. How did we get here? So back around the year 2000, it's been about 20 years now, we started to figure out, gosh, value doesn't flow very well when it flows through silos. If we have a separate group doing operations, if we have a separate group doing our testing, if there's a separate group doing hardware, it's very hard to coordinate those activities. Things like the political boundaries within an organization can get in the way. These might be in different locations, and that can get in the way. If they're in different locations, communication can be very, very difficult. So we wanted to solve that, and we did that by developing Agile. And so Agile really helps solve the problems because of 3 main things. One is by developing cross-functional teams, we broke down those silos, and everyone was focused on delivering the same value in the same priority order. Those teams really collaborated in order to deliver that value, and we were able to organize ourselves in a way that we were able to get value to the customer faster, and we were able to get fast feedback from the customer and fast feedback within our teams. So we had this mindset of relentlessly improving. So in the 20 years since Agile has emerged, we've also figured out how to scale Agile. So of course, this is the Scaled Agile Framework. There are other scaling frameworks out there, but of course I have a bias toward the Scaled Agile Framework. So if you think about the beginning of Agile, it's in this lower left-hand corner. You see the Agile teams, you see XP, Scrum, Kanban. So that's incorporated into the Scaled Agile Framework. And then the scaling framework takes a look and says, how do we stitch those teams together in order to increase the value of Agile in the organization? And how do we create, at the portfolio level even, lean budgeting, ways to lean out the operations for the entire portfolio? Lastly, you'll see that the Scaled Agile Framework starts to talk about business agility. So when you have this whole center of information technology that we've turned Agile, what you'll notice is that the bottleneck starts to shift. All of a sudden, IT might be waiting on finance or legal or marketing. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we create the organization so the entire organization is Agile, not just IT? And that's business agility. So business agility really requires that technical agility and the business level commitment to product and value stream thinking. And we'll be talking about the value stream a little bit later on in the presentation. It also requires that everybody involved in delivering those solutions use lean and agile practices. Because as this graphic indicates, many organizations now are driven by software applications. Hotels are. Nike has over 10,000 software developers in order to run its supply chain. And we've got to make sure that these other parts of the organization are also involved in that so that we don't have these organizational silos. Of course, I don't have to teach you this. This is the Business Agility Institute conference. You already know all this. Okay, so what challenges do we have when we're starting to scale Agile across these functions? What I see out in the marketplace is that I see people focusing on these individual areas. So for example, I see people focusing on Agile HR, Agile Marketing, Agile legal. And that's well and good. That's that's a natural thing to think about, is how do I take these Agile's principles and practices and apply them to my area? And there is a level of specialization that's needed. However, what we end up with and what we don't want to do is have Agile silos where Agile Marketing group can't talk with the Agile sales group. The Agile sales group is waiting on an Agile finance group. We've now totally destroyed this notion of a cross-functional group of people working to deliver value. So the focus of this presentation is how do we start to break that down? So what you'll see as well is you'll see a lot of these different Agile manifestos. If you searched on any one of these, Agile for Finance, Agile HR, you'll see these individual manifestos. I don't have an opinion either way if these manifestos are good or if they're helpful. My guess is they're helpful when you're starting with a functional area. You're trying to get them to understand how an Agile mindset can be beneficial to them. The other thing that I see are things like this. So this is Agile Sherpas. They're a well-respected organization, and they have their own scaling framework, which again is helpful when you're thinking about the function, but it's not necessarily helpful when you're thinking about how to connect these different functions together. So let's take a look at these three concepts to consider when we think about how do we start to break down those silos and how do we connect people across the silos to make an entire organization agile. The three concepts I'd like you to consider are lean agile leadership, how to organize around value, and the last but not least, creating organizational agility. We're going to dive into each one of these. So first of all, lean agile leadership. There's three components that are important for lean agile leadership. The first is mindset and principles. So when you think about leading change and you think about those silos that we just described and how you connect those, we have the same issue that we had when we first started to connect the silos in IT. There's political boundaries. People are proud of the fact they might lead one of these silos. I lead marketing, I lead finance. And so we need to get the leaders on board. This is going to be a big organizational shift. And without the leaders on board, the shift isn't going to happen. So we need, first and foremost, to get our leaders thinking about the mindset and principles. How do I move from a fixed mindset, which says, I have the right mindset, or I have the right answer, my ideas are the best ideas, over into a growth mindset, which says, good ideas can come from anywhere. I'm open to new suggestions. I may be wrong. And I personally have had to go on this journey. So when I was in college, I learned Taylorism, which is a management theory that says there's one best way. The manager knows that one best way, and it's the manager's job to impart that knowledge on the other people in the team. I mean, there's other parts of Taylorism that talk about delegation, some of that command and control mentality, but that's literally what I was taught in college. So I've had to go on this journey to figure out how to embrace more of a growth mindset. And I want to, as we're thinking about lean agile leadership, think about the leaders and the journey that they may have gone on. And they may have been successful in getting where they're at through the fixed mindset. So this is asking a lot of our leaders, but we really need them to make this shift in order for Agile to truly be adopted. And that's because we need our leaders to lead by example. So if a leader is telling an organization, sure, I'm open to business agility, but they're not leading by example, then that transformation isn't going to go anywhere. I'm hoping for a few of you, this is starting to sound familiar, that you're starting to say to yourself, oh, this sounds a lot like an agile transformation on the IT side. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Because what we're trying to do is we're much like on the IT side, where we had to stitch together these individual silos. We had the testing silo and the software silo and the operations silo. And we had to break down those silos by convincing IT leadership to adopt this new mindset. We have to do the same thing on the business side. So you can see here, leading by example is things like decentralized decision making, emotional intelligence, growing other people and really focusing on that so that these leaders can lead the change, because we need the leaders to lead the change. Now, having said that, I would advise you that it's risky for leaders to lead the change. If you are somebody who's high up in an organization and you've spent your career building yourself up to that, to embrace this new way of working feels like a pretty big shift. So if you're in a position where you're trying to convince leaders to embrace the change, I would invite you to do a couple of things. One is recognize the risk for them. The second is give them space, give your leaders space to share with you their problems. What is most important to them? Is it that we as an organization aren't getting the right things out the door? Is the biggest challenge that you're not able to respond to change? Create a platform for leaders from multiple areas of the organization to meet, to align on their problems, to prioritize those problems, really figure out what it is that they need to change within their organization. And then start to just freeform, get them to think about what those solutions might be. Your job as the change agent isn't necessarily to force a solution on the leadership team. It's to guide them to a place where they see agile or lean agile thinking as a natural extension of the solutions they've already come up with, because they've really got to own that change and lead that change. Okay, so we need lean agile leadership. The next thing we need to do is to organize around value. So here too, we've got another big shift, right? We've got to stop organizing this way and start organizing this way. Well, what is this way? So this is an example of an operational value stream. On the one end, you've got what we call a trigger. So the example I'm going to walk us through here is that of a loan. So I'm an individual and I want a mortgage for my house. I want to buy a house and I need a loan. So I go on my mobile device and I want this to be easy. So I'm going to see if I can fill out my loan application on my phone. That's my trigger. Then there's going to be several steps. I'm going to have to fill out some information. Then I'm going to have to submit that information. I'm going to have somebody evaluate the loan. I'm going to have somebody grant me the loan. I'm going to have to start paying on that loan. And I'm going to need somebody to service the loan. Those are all pieces of value that are delivered through this operational value stream. Okay, so that's a very different way of thinking when you think about all the people that are involved in delivering that value in a cross-functional nature. Because the customer doesn't say, okay, marketing, you got me here. Now I want to talk to sales. Now I want to talk to legal. Now I want to talk to finance. That's not the way the customer works. The customer works this way. So we're going to try and organize ourselves in a way that the customer works. How does that look in a big organization? So using our loan example, you can see we're in a big bank environment here, and we're in the consumer banking division. So I'm a customer, I'm just an individual versus I'm a corporation, and I want my loan. Now, under loans, there's probably a bunch of different types of loans. There's car loans and loans for toys like boats and jet skis or whatever. We're talking about a home loan. And we're talking about an operational value stream that focuses on home loans. And you can see that that cuts across all these different parts of the business. You've got customer service, you've got the loan servicing, the people who actually take your payment, you've got product management. So what kind of loan are we going to offer? Is it a 5-year loan, a 20-year loan, a 30-year loan? What is the interest rate? We need all of these people working together in order to deliver that value to the customer. So the first thing we have to do as an organization is identify those value streams. So identify the value streams, then identify the people in the systems involved in those value streams. So hopefully you're thinking about, oh, now I know why the leaders need to be sold on this concept, because this is pretty big. This is a pretty big shift in thinking when we're thinking about value streams. So let's just take a look at attracting the customer. So in order to attract the customer, you might think, well, that's a marketing thing. Well, is it? So as a marketer, I want to extend an offer to, let's say I am targeting young professionals, and I want to offer them a certain interest rate on the mobile app, and I want it to pop up in front of the customer so they know it's available. Well, I probably need to talk to finance to make sure the special interest rate is something we can deliver. I need to talk to risk management. In the US, we probably need to talk to our compliance people to make sure we're not having any discriminatory issues, that we're not favoring one group over another. I probably need to talk to the IT folks in order to get that ad to pop up on the mobile device. There's a lot of people involved in attracting the customer, and we need them all working together. So in order for that to happen, people from all those different functions need to agree to dedicate people to these cross-functional agile teams. All right, so how does that look when we take another click in? So here we have, we're attracting the customer, we've identified a few systems. This time we're talking about the mobile app that we're going to deliver the loan through. So look at all these people that could be involved. We've got people in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. We've got people in Redmond, Washington in the US. We've got people in Bangalore. We've got developers in Bangalore, in Delhi, Estonia. Who knows? We could have people in Peru. And we've got people from legal, from marketing, from the customer support teams, all that need to work together. And the leaders need to agree that these people are the right people to work together so that we don't have those handoffs and delays that we might otherwise have if everybody was located in their hierarchy in their region. So to look at this another way, these are all those different hierarchies that we just were talking about. A development group over in India. We've got an operations group located in Estonia. We've got another group located in the US. And we need to virtually bring those together. So we need the leadership on board in order to develop this cross-functional group. All right, I'm going to take a breath there, check for questions. I know we usually do Q&A at the end, but one, I need a drink of water. Plus, I want to give you a chance to make sure we're tracking together. I'm just going to take a couple minutes here. Feel free to drop a question in. And even if I don't get to it now, it's a good to have questions for the end as well. All right, so there's a couple of advantages of working this way. Of course, we talked about the handoffs and delays, but we also can reorganize virtually. You see that in this, we've just drawn a loose circle around these hierarchies. We're not suggesting a formal reorganization. We are suggesting a long-lived value stream so that this would be the group of people who work on the mobile app. And the mobile app should be around for a little while. And maybe we have another version in another couple of years, but this group of people should be able to work together for a good chunk of time on a dedicated piece of value so that they can coalesce as a team, understand each other's roles, and really get into that groove. So again, you should be thinking about, this sounds like an IT transformation. The answer is yes. I would invite you to think about what slice of the business you would like to transform, because it will be too much to transform the entire business all at once. So think about, gosh, yeah, maybe we could do that for a mobile app. Maybe I could do it for this product line. Maybe I could organize around value for this line of business. You don't have to do it all at once. In fact, I would recommend against doing it all at once because the risk is too high. You're going to learn along the way, you're going to learn about your business. So think about how you can start to pilot this and learn along the way. All right. So we've got, it seems like the stream of value is organized by a group of activists that's focused on the client journey. So that is absolutely one way that you can organize around a buyer's journey. There's different types of value streams. So for example, another type of value stream is a manufacturing value stream. So that's a value stream that probably wouldn't be organized around the buyer's journey, but certainly organizing around the buyer's journey is one way to organize around value. So thanks for adding that. And then we've got a question here. What management rituals do you see in matrix organization where product value streams exist with many parts of the company still running in the hierarchical model? Yeah, so this, Brian, thanks for submitting that question. I'm not sure I understand about the management rituals, but it is this, we have this concept we call the dual operating system, that you break off a group like this, and it might be similar to something you call the tiger team. So it is a group of people that you break off. They're working in a different style. Some of them might still be matrixed back to the management organization or the hierarchy. Now, what you can do in the Scaled Agile Framework is invite some of those people from the hierarchy to observe what's going on in the network. Over time, what will most likely happen is it should be circular, so that you get people who have experienced working in these cross-functional agile teams that maybe then they go back and work in the hierarchy for a little bit, but they're going to bring that new mindset back into the hierarchy. And then maybe they'll get redeployed into another different value stream and they get to experience that again. Eventually, you can see we kind of chip away to the point where we start to get organizational agility. Right. I don't know if that answered your question. Feel free to drop something in the chat if a follow-on question if that didn't. All right. So we've talked about the importance of leadership. We've talked about how do you start to organize around value. That's a journey. It's not easy. Um, Leaders will, there's a lot of different ways to organize around value, and it's hard for leaders to figure that out. It takes a while to get to consensus. So just allow for some of that time, breathing room for that to happen. Okay, last but not least, we need organizational agility. So what are we talking about when we mean organizational agility? This is talking about teams and strategies. So the first thing we need is lean thinking people and agile teams. So we've got the leaders on board, we're organizing around value. Now we've got to talk about how do we turn those functions agile. So this is where I do see a lot of value around agile marketing, agile finance. You've just got to do it in a way that if those people are sitting on the same teams, or so if you have like legal and finance and marketing on the same team, that they can still speak the same language. And hopefully the training that you've given them is either generic enough that they can speak the same language, or there's enough shared foundation that even if you took something specialized like Agile for Finance, you don't have an issue then talking with somebody who's taken Agile for marketing. And that's where the principles, the shared values of Agile can come into play. Because the truth of the matter is that you're going to have people who are on these cross-functional teams, but you're also going to have people who stay in the hierarchy. I think payroll is a good example, where if their job is payroll, then they might not be on a cross-functional team. That's pretty specific to finance. But what you're going to have in that situation is they can lean out their business operations. So maybe we've got people who are processing payroll and they're producing a bunch of reports that nobody ever uses anymore. So they can really look at what value they're delivering and where the waste is. So those reports that aren't getting read, that's an example of waste. There might be wait states. So examples where there's delays that can be removed from their workflows. That's another example of the way people can lean out their business operations, even if they're not on a cross-functional team. And that's going to be valuable because at some point they might change jobs, and at least you're starting to build a foundation of thinking around how do you lean out operations, how do you adopt agile principles, so that those people would be ready if they were offered the opportunity to be put on a cross-functional team. All right, so I've got a question here from Daniela. What methods or ways would you recommend to identify value streams correctly in an organization? Okay, so Daniela, that is an entirely different presentation. But the good news is at least if you go to the Scaled Agile Framework website, we have just done a ton of webinars on how to do this. There's an entire process on how to socialize developing value streams with the leaders before you even go into attempting this, because we've got to get everybody on the same page with regards to how this is done. And then, like I said, everybody's going to have a slightly different vision. You've just got to experiment with your organization because there's a lot of different ways that you could organize. Try something. Again, the thought is that these are flexible. This isn't a giant reorg where you need to give people new titles, where you need to rejigger the reporting structure. Pick a starting point, experiment with it, and stay agile. These value streams can evolve over time. All right. So so can I share the link? I don't know if I can share it on the fly. I'll see if I have it handy, but if not, again, go to Scaled Agile Framework and just do a search on value stream webinars, and you should get it there. All right, so this is the big ta-da. This is the big ending. All right, so we've got leaders who get it. They understand why they need to start breaking down their silos. We're going to try and organize around value, even if it's just this tiny area, even if it's the mobile app. That's going to give us some level of strategic agility. And that's the holy grail, right? That's what we're trying to go after with business agility. So when we're in a changing environment, and guess what? We're always in a changing environment. Everybody points to COVID, and of course that's a big one. But I'm thinking about things like the floods that are happening in Australia. What are those companies doing? What are the local stores doing? The retailers, there's probably some retailers that might be affected. Things like economic downturns. There are many things that are happening on a daily basis. I even think of things like the Olympics. There might be a big sporting event that happens. Now that's going to look different. So if you're a sponsor of a big sporting event like that, how do you have to adapt your strategy to accommodate the fact that international travel will not be allowed relative to the Olympics? So if you're primed, if you've got the leadership agreeing, if you've got organized by value streams, if you've got lean thinking people and agile teams, you'll be able to adopt your strategy. So just to put a nice bow on this, let's go back to our mobile app example, the individual who's looking for a loan. Let's just say that you are a large financial organization HSBC, I'm just going to pull them out of the air, who is sponsoring the Olympics, and you have a commitment to sponsor the Olympics, but all of a sudden you're not going to get a lot of signage because most of your international audience is going to be watching through the TV. So you need that audience to take action at home. Well, all of a sudden your mobile app takes on a totally different level of importance. And hopefully, if you've got an agile team and you've got an agile business, you will have been able to shift your strategy from in-person, on-site events to let's create some sort of interactive experience on our mobile app and be able to deliver on that. All right, so now just to summarize, we're doing pretty good on the IT side. I mean, look at all this detail we've blown out on how to make cross-functional, large-scale organizations on the IT side. How do we take some of that learning and apply it to the business side so we can start to bridge those gaps? And hopefully, what you've come away with is this idea that you can take many of the techniques that you use in order to do an IT transformation and transfer those over into the business side in order to break down the silos. Get your leaders on board, organize around value, develop organizational agility, and then, of course, there's just the underpinnings of a good transformation. You'll need a guiding coalition. Start small, get some wins, build on those wins, get your metrics in place so that people can see the value of that, and then build bigger and bigger until you've achieved this goal of business agility. That's what I've got for you today. Again, I'm Melissa Reeve. If you want to connect, here's my LinkedIn. Feel free to drop me an email, especially if you want links to Value Stream. I'll have more time to organize some links for you and point you in the right direction.